Bwom, 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 bum, 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 dun, 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 dun. That's the intro to the podcast because I didn't want to find any music. What's up, y'all? So this is what I am tentatively calling the O2B podcast experience extravaganza. No, I was thinking O2B podcast. I don't know. If you have a better name for it, let me know. So for those of you that are not familiar, I used to have a podcast for actually a few years that I did with my brother, and it was called the Work for Change podcast, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that we had a lot of fun. We were able to interview some really cool people. It was a good time. But then my brother, he got married. He had a kid, and now he just had another kid. And so that basically was put on ice in 2021. We haven't been able to do one since then. So basically that podcast, the Work for Change podcast, has disappeared. And I've actually had a good amount of people that did listen to it. You know, I've never had a huge podcast, so it's not like I had millions of people, adoring fans, that were asking me, John, please make another podcast. But I've had a few people that have said, hey, I really enjoyed the podcast. You know, would you do another one? And up until now, I've kind of been like, I don't know, mainly because the thought of talking to myself, it was kind of scary, even though I do that in most of my videos. But usually there's something that I'm talking about. There's a very specific thing, right, that I'm talking about. And this is more free form. And so I thought, like, just talking to a camera to nobody, because I've done live streams as well, right? And those will go on for hours. But again, there's like people there, right? There's a chat. You're kind of talking back and forth. So the thought of like just doing a podcast where you are talking to yourself was kind of scary. And so that being said, I think the plan, this is all tentative. Like this, literally, I decided to record this yesterday and start this podcast yesterday. So I didn't want to go and like make it too convoluted, because a lot of times I'll be like, I want to do this thing. And then it gets to be way too complicated. And I try and make it super cool at the start and like have all these graphics and all this stuff ready for when it launches. It's like, you know, this whole crazy thing. I was like, you know what? I just want to record a podcast. Like, let me just get this recorded and see if I even like it, and then we'll go from there. And so that's what is happening today. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to record a podcast. I have an idea of what I want to talk about. Basically, I'm going to go through basically my life story. I feel like that's kind of a good way to start a podcast, right? You guys that have been following me for a long time probably know a lot of these stories, but it will still be a good way for anyone that maybe doesn't know me that well, to kind of get to know me a little bit more, and maybe make me a little bit more comfortable doing this thing where I'm talking to myself. But that being said, I do want to do interviews and stuff like that. And I definitely think that talking to people will be fun. And I don't want it to just be weight loss. That's why I didn't call it the Obese to Beast podcast. I just decided O2B. Again, if anyone has any better names, feel free. Like, I don't know, message me on Instagram or something if you have a cool idea for a podcast name, because I really that's about as creative as I can get. You know, the O2B podcast. I don't freaking know what to call this thing. So, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So if you want to hit me up on Instagram, Obese to Beast, give me a follow, and you know, let me know. And I think I am also going to post this on YouTube on my second channel, which is just my name, John Glaude. And then I'm going to be using, I think, Spotify, and I'm pretty sure you can upload videos to that. So if this works well, there will be a video on Spotify of it, which is kind of cool because I have it already set up for video, so might as well use that. So I think that's kind of everything I wanted to get out of the way before I started with my life story. It sounds so self-indulgent. Like, let me tell you all about myself because I'm that important. I really don't think that. But, you know, I feel like it'll be a good way to get the podcast started. So my name is John Glaude. I was born in 1992 in San Diego, California, where I have lived the entirety of my life. So I am 31 years old, just turned 31 November 13th. And so growing up, this feels so weird, but whatever. Growing up, my family was very poor. For a long time, I didn't like to use that word. I would always say, like, we didn't have much money, and my girlfriend was like, you guys were poor. It's okay to say that. And I don't know. I think because I always felt like there were people that were worse off than us that I didn't like to use that term. I don't know. But yeah, we were very poor. And actually, when I was 2 years old, we were actually taken away from my mom and my dad, because she was a drug addict, and they were both drug addicts. And CPS was called actually by oldest brother, Travis, because he was concerned with the situation, and we were taken away. And so we were taken away from my mom, and we were put into Child Protective Services, or CPS. We got taken to this place called Polinsky here in San Diego. I'm pretty sure it's still around. Basically, it's a group home kind of thing, but like a really massive one. It's not really a group home. It's like a facility, right? And so, we were there for a little bit, and we actually ended up staying with our uncle for about a year. And this was actually really lucky that we got placed with him, because if it wasn't for that, from what I was told, we would have been forced to stay with my grandmother, who was my dad's mom, who lives on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And so, and we would have had to be there until my youngest sister was 18 years old, and she's about a year younger than I am. So we got kind of lucky, but I don't remember much from this time because I was pretty young, but my brother and I have some memories. I've actually realized I don't have a lot of memories from childhood. I think that might have something to do with everything that happened. But my brother has kind of told stories about, like, it just wasn't the best situation. I think it was a lot for my uncle to take on, especially hindsight's 2020. And now that I'm older, I can look back and think, wow, that's a lot to take on, because they were probably just a little bit older than I am now, right? 31. It's weird to say that I'm 31, but yeah, I'm 31. And so they probably were not that much older than I was when we were, or maybe they were even younger. I don't know, but it was not the best. But luckily, we were actually I guess you could call it a success story when it comes to getting taken away from your family, because we were actually put back with my mother after about a year. And the reason being is my mom actually, she went to this place called Calvary Ranch, which is a Christian, well, it was, it's not around anymore, but it's called Calvary Ranch. It's a Christian rehabilitation center. And that's where she got clean off of drugs. And so after about a year, we were put back with her. And so for a long time in my life, I was actually I really identified very hard as a Christian because of that story. But that's kind of changed recently. The past few years, I've talked about it before in videos. Maybe I'll talk about it later. I don't know. But so we were put back with my mom. But then, growing up, things were tough. Money was tight. My mom was, someone that just came from where she was, and now she was trying to raise. It was mainly I have a lot of siblings, but as far as the siblings that were in the house with me, it was my brother and then my younger sister. And so I was in the middle. So it was three of us, and then my mom and my dad, they tried to live together for a while. Didn't work out. They just argued a lot. It just didn't work out. They were not meant to be soulmates. But it is cool because they're still very close friends, and there's no animosity between them. They're actually they're close friends to this day. And so it all worked out as far as that is concerned. But growing up, like I said, we didn't have much money, and so times were tough. Things were tight, and so we ate a lot of cheap food and stuff like that. And so I, kind of speeding up a little bit, talking about how I kind of started gaining weight. So, growing up, we didn't have much money. It was what it was. But then when I was about, I think 6 or 7, up until that point, I was actually a relatively normal weight kid. I didn't really gain any weight or anything like that. But then I actually had a hernia that I had to get removed when I was 6 or 7. Again, I don't remember the exact age. And it was right in my groin area. And so that feels like it was a turning point in my life. I don't know if there is anything that was related, if it was actually if they were these things that were actually related as far as the gaining weight after the surgery. But I felt like I started gaining weight after that surgery because I was kind of bedridden. My mom used to kind of think that it was maybe the medication they put me on that made me gain weight. I really have no idea, but that's when I started gaining weight, right? So I was 6 or 7 years old, and then I started, then I was the husky kid, and throughout this time, I just kind of started gaining weight. And in elementary school, it was just every time I would be in a new grade, right? Summer would come around, and then you go back to school in the fall. Every time that would happen, I would be in a bigger size, right? So every time I had to buy a bigger size shirt, bigger size shorts. That just became the norm for me. And I would talk to family, and they would always like say, oh, he's gonna grow out of it. He'll like, he'll get taller, and then he won't be as wide. That didn't happen because your boy is 5'8", and I'm not tall. And so I just started gaining weight, and I think looking back, like I've tried to like psychoanalyze, I don't know if that's the right term, but I've tried to psychoanalyze my past and like, what was the reason, why was it that I gained so much weight, but my siblings didn't? Because my siblings were not overweight at all, actually. It was really just me. And that's why I think my family was so concerned. Like I was lucky that I didn't, like my sister and my brother, they never really made fun of me for my weight. My mom never really made fun of me, but she was very concerned. And so she would bring it up. And one thing about me that it's been this way since I was a kid is I am when I get like uncomfortable or angry, I guess is the right term, I shut down. So I never really like yell or scream or get like really like, I'm going to yell at you, right? It's more, I just shut down and I'm like, all right, I'm out. Like if you try to have that conversation with me, I'm just not going to talk to you. And so that was something that kind of happened growing up. Like whenever my mom would bring it up, I would just shut her down, or I would try to lose weight. Like I've talked about this in the past, but I remember Slim Fast was like pretty big at one point, and I was like, okay, I'll do Slim Fast. I don't know how my mom got like a case of it. I don't know how she got it, but she got it. And I was like, okay, in my brain, little kid brain, I was like, you just drink Slim Fast and you lose weight. And so basically I was drinking Slim Fast, but continuing to eat the things that I ate. And so obviously I didn't lose any weight. And, I went on tons of diets, and it felt like it never worked out. And it just, I was the normal story, right? The kid that kind of starts getting bigger, and then I just never stopped really. And so, growing up, I would try and lose weight. I played, so the weight did affect me quite a bit, and it was pretty frustrating. So like one of the biggest things that it really did affect was me being able to play football. So when I was a lot younger, I really loved football. I still enjoy it, American football, where you actually throw the ball more than you kick it, but whatever. And so I really loved football, and I wanted to play really bad. I wanted to play Pop Warner, but I had two limitations. One was money. It was very expensive. We couldn't afford it. And two was my weight. I was actually above the weight that you could be to play in the age group that I was in, right? And so I played rec flag football. So there was a rec league right next to the school that I grew up going to. And it was basically, we have these rec centers here in San Diego, at least, where we would have like a team, and then we would go play the other teams from the other rec centers around San Diego. And so I went to this place called Renette, and I started playing on that team, and I really, really loved it. It was literally what I looked forward to the most all week long, was when I would be able to go to practices, when I'd be able to play games. I really, really, I loved it so much. And so I remember the first practice that we had, we did this drill where, so we would have like basically the people trying to get the flag were like starting on the side, and then the people that had the ball so you're trying to grab their flag, they were starting straight. And so they would run straight, and then you'd kind of come at an angle and try and run up and catch them and get the flag, right? And so they would have like the faster kids going straight, like in the straight line, because they had more ground to run than we did. We were kind of cutting them off. So they had like the slower kids, the chubbier kids, whatever, right? On that line. And so I was obviously the slower, chubbier kid. And so we did the drill, and it was my turn. And I went, and, the guy started, and I went and I ran after him. I ran my hardest. I dove, and I got the flag, right? And the coach at the time, he saw it, and he was just like, oh, that was awesome. He was like, we're going to call you Rhino. You're like a rhino. And that was actually my first nickname, like growing up. And so for a long time, a lot of people just called me Rhino. Growing up, I actually had a shirt when I turned 10. My mom made it for me. I think it was my mom or someone in my family made it for me on my 10th birthday, that it was like a regular t-shirt, but on the back it said Rhino and then number 10. And it was like textured, like rhino skin kind of. That was a cool gift, but that was a huge part of who I was, right? As a kid, I loved playing flag football. I love football. I wanted to play full contact. that never was able to happen. I've told the story about high school, which maybe we'll get into in this, but it wasn't able to happen. And so I just really put all of my effort into playing flag football. And funny enough, I actually ended up getting the MVP award 2 times, which was not normal because I was a center. So I was the guy that snapped the ball. And then in these leagues, you played both offense and defense, right? So when we played offense, I was center, I'd snap the ball. And then when we played defense, I would just be a defensive lineman and I would pass rush, right? So we didn't have to do like the counting alligators, which was fun. So once the ball was snapped, you just tried to push through the defenders and try and get the flag. And, when I was younger, I actually got a lot of sacks. Like I think on my team, I always had the most quote unquote sacks, right? You just grab the flag of the quarterback. And, but as I got older, I got slow. Well, I think I got a little bit slower and the other kids got faster, and that did not happen as much. But when I was younger, I actually got a lot of tackles or flags or whatever. And that was just a really big part of my personality. It was something that I really, really enjoyed. And, I'm realizing now as I'm older and I understand myself more, that was my first ever, I think, hyperfixation. So I was diagnosed with ADD, which now I don't think exists. It's all ADHD, but I was diagnosed with ADD when I was relatively young, I think like 11 or 12. And that has been something that has really been a big part of my life. For a long time before I realized it. And then once I was diagnosed, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And it's something that now as a 31-year-old man, I see it. I feel like I see it more and more every day with how I get hyperfixated on things. And so my first ever hyperfixation was football for sure. And I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I looked forward to playing football more than anything. And so, with that being said, I was a relatively athletic fat kid, I guess is the best way to put it. Like I liked to run. I liked to be outside. I wasn't the kid that just sat and did nothing, but I definitely ate too much regardless of how much activity that I had. Right. And so, that's kind of moving on, into middle school. It was kind of the same thing. I continued to play flag football and really enjoyed it. And this is when I started like significantly gaining weight to where I think like it started to freak out my mom and freak out the other people around me because I just kept getting bigger and bigger and no one else in my family was. And I think looking back, the reason that I gained weight was I would eat the same foods as everyone else around me, which weren't the best, right? Because we didn't have much money. So it was like top ramen and chicken and rice, but with like cream of mushroom soup slathered on it. Or we'd have spaghetti a lot, hamburger helper. And then like the ground beef we would get was like the highest fat content because that's the cheapest, right? And so like the food that we had wasn't the healthiest, obviously, right? Hot Pockets a lot, instant ramen, but I would just eat more. And I don't think I realized, like, it sounds silly now as someone that understands this, but at the time I didn't realize that, like, for me, I just felt like it made sense. I'm eating the same foods. Why am I gaining more weight than everyone else? But the reality was that I would eat significantly more than my brothers and sisters. This is still something that I struggle with. I eat incredibly fast, very fast. It's honestly like, I get embarrassed eating around people because of how fast I eat. If I eat as fast as I want, people like they are awestruck by it. Honestly, it's like, how are you done already? And then that just makes me feel bad. But it is what it is. Like when I'm around people, you know what? Actually, I'm just realizing this, Ryan. I do think that it makes me not want to eat around people because I don't eat around people that often. I usually, like, if I'm out to eat with people and like there's a natural conversation, I'm not thinking about it too much. But if there's not, and especially if I'm really hungry, I really struggle with it. But I am off topic. So, that was middle school, so I kind of want to talk about my hyperfixations too. Like these are things that really have shaped me into who I am now. So my next hyperfixation, I would say, came as, well, it was twofold. So My next one was probably church. I became a very, very much so a church kid, and it became like a big part of my personality. But the next thing was skateboarding. So skating was like a really, really big part of my personality. I hung out with all the skaters in junior high, and luckily they were like the cool kids. And so I was friends with the cool kids. And so I've been very lucky that I never really got bullied that much because of my weight. Not that much. It happened. Of course it happened, but not that much. And so in junior high, skateboarding was this hyperfixation for me. It was this really big part of my life. I thought about it all the time. And, that was kind of a big part of my personality. And so, in California, in America, middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Now, another thing about me is that I was always basically a year younger than everyone else in my classes. Just because my birthday's in November, I got put in a little bit earlier. And so I was always like a year younger. So like I graduated high school when I was 17 years old, right? And so I was always a little bit younger than the kids in my classes, which, now as a 30-year-old, 31-year-old, it's not as big of a deal if I'm next to a 32-year-old. It doesn't matter. But when you're very young, those ages really matter. And so I was always younger. And at first I really started struggling in school. And I think my mom, her first instinct was, oh, maybe I need to hold him back. Because I think like 2nd grade was when it started really being obvious. And so, but then that was when I got diagnosed with ADD, because we like did a bunch of tests, and they decided that I was going to be put in special ed, which was, interesting. I was in this thing called RSP, which is Resource Specialist Program. And so it's not like a lot of times you're in the same classes as other kids, but you just might have extra help. Like when I was really young, I also have this thing called dysgraphia. So my handwriting is unbelievably bad, to where my teachers would always say, I can't read what you're writing, John. I can't read this. And I'd be like, I don't know, I've tried. I used to have to go to classes. Like I would leave like history class, right? And I'd go into this special room with just this one person that would try and help me write, right? And it's never gotten better. It's still so bad. But so when I was really young, I had this little type thing that I would bring. I forget the name of it. But that didn't help me at all, because I'm very slow at typing. Like if you've been to my streams where I talk about it, I think I type like a 30 word per minute. Like it's so bad. And so that didn't really help me, because it would take me so long to write anything. But yeah, so I was diagnosed with ADD. I was put in special ed when I was in 2nd grade. And that was another thing that really defined me. I just felt stupid. Growing up, I really felt dumb because I was in special ed. I was in RSP. I just didn't feel like I belonged. And I remember one time this like came to a head, at least in my brain, when I applied. I wanted to be part of AVID, which was like this program in junior high that was like supposed to like help you get ready for college, and like you would like help out around the school and do these different things and like sell candy and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, I mean, it looked cool, it looked fun, I wanted to be part of it. And I remember you would have to do like this mock interview, and I remember I told them that I was in special ed, I was in RSP, and I felt like they gave me a weird look. And I basically the story that I told in my head was that they decided I couldn't be part of AVID because I was in special ed. I don't know if that's true. It probably isn't, right? But again, became part of my personality. I would just tell myself I'm dumb, so you cannot do XYZ. And so I would really not try a lot of things, because I felt like there's no way I can do it. I am dumb, right? And that was this mantra almost that I would tell myself. I had really low self-esteem growing up. I still struggle with it to this day. I struggle with imposter syndrome. It's probably the biggest issue that I have. I don't believe anyone when anyone says that they have helped them. I'm like, you're lying to me. I don't know why you're trying to be nice to me. What do you want? Like, I don't believe anybody. And so that's always been something that I've struggled with my entire life. At least I think I have. And so, yeah, so that was like junior high. I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm really trying. And again, throughout this, I'm just gaining weight, right? I'm getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's becoming more and more of an issue. And so let's like kind of get into high school. So I get into high school, and it felt weird. Like high school was a trip for me, because again, like I was a year younger than everyone. So realistically, I should have been going into 8th grade, but I'm going into high school, and I'm seeing these seniors that look like 30 years old, and I feel like I am literally a baby, right? It was wild. It was wild. High school was the first few days were scary. I just did not feel like I belonged there at all. But yeah, so I started going to high school. I graduated in 2010, so I think my first year was 2006. If that ages me, it is what it is. But high school was interesting. I didn't get bullied too much. I had a few things. Like the biggest instance, and I've told this story many times, was I wanted to play football really bad when I was in 9th grade. So basically the summer, I tried out twice. First time, I literally just didn't. I was lazy, and then the second time was this story that I've told before. But so the first time I tried out, I was in 8th grade, so it was the summer before 9th grade, right? So I hadn't even gone to the school yet, and I decided, okay, I want to try out for football, and so I went to the tryouts, and I remember we had one practice, and I was literally so sore after that practice because I was completely sedentary, right? Like especially as I got older, I became more and more sedentary, but I was completely sedentary. And I went into this practice and pushed myself as hard as I could. I remember I was more sore after that than I think I've ever been since any other workout I've done. All the other things I've done Murph a bunch of times. I've done these crazy CrossFit workouts that have tons of stuff in it. I don't think I've ever been as sore as I was the few days after that practice. It was miserable. And so I think I might have went to 2 practices and was like, this ain't for me, because they were talking about, all right, we're going to be doing 2 a day soon. And now I'm like, well, that sounds kind of fun. That'd be cool. But then I was like, no, absolutely not. Like I could not run around the lap, I could not do a single lap around the track, right? And the track was a quarter mile. I could not even get close to doing a lap. And so I was not fit, right? Obviously I was, at this point it's pretty large. I was like definitely the largest kid in freshman year. And so then freshman year happens, a lot of stuff happens that year. High school was tough. I was not a good student. I just wasn't. I was very lazy. I could probably count on my hand how many times I actually did homework at home, because I think it was laziness was absolutely part of it. Like I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't, but I think another part was I just didn't believe I could. I had no belief in myself. Like I truly did not believe I would be able to do these things. And so I just wouldn't try. It was like, if I don't try, I won't be embarrassed of the result, because I'm like, I didn't even try, right? And so that was something that I did in high school. I started doing in like 9th grade, I think. I was just very, very lazy and scared to push myself. And so then in 10th grade, I decided I wanted to try out for the football team again. I was like, all right, I'm mad at myself for, giving up, and so I'm going to try again. And so this was when I had the really bad experience where I ended up leaving crying. And so they would always start with doing a lap around the track, which again is a quarter mile. And they would have the bigger dudes, so like the linemen at the front, and then like the faster guys behind you. And so it was to motivate you to try and run faster. That was basically why they did it. And that was miserable, because every single person passed me, right? And I was basically in the front. Everyone passed me. But, it is what it is. I wasn't expecting to be fast. And so then we did drills outside, and I pushed myself very hard, at least as to what I could do at the time. And then after that, we went into the weight room. Up until this point, I don't think I had ever lifted, like significantly, right? Maybe I had been in a gym a couple times before this, but I'd never really lifted. And I remember they were doing squats. And so they got me on the bar, and they had 135 pounds, so it's just 145 on each side, and they told me to squat it. I had never squatted in my entire life up until this point. Never squatted. So I got the bar. It was like basically sitting on my neck, right? And so it was hurting a ton. I couldn't do it. And so I was like, I can't do it. I had on my, I re-racked it. And the way that they did it was they had like the captains of the different, the lineman captain was working with us. So the lineman captain, or he was at least like someone that was in like a junior or a senior. He just said something like along the lines of, you're the biggest dude here and you can't even squat this. What's the point? Like, why would we even want you, basically? And that was like a knife in my chest, like hearing that, because I already felt that, right? Like that's when people make fun of you, if it's something that you're like, that's ridiculous. Like if someone says I don't know, they make fun of me in a way that I'm like, that's ridiculous. I don't think that's true at all. It just rolls off your back, right? But when it's something that you maybe feel slightly, when someone says that to you, it just, right? It just hurts more. It's like, yeah. And, oh man, that was terrible. It just like a knife. It felt like a knife. And, I end up walking away. I start tearing up, and then I go up to one of the coaches and I say, "Hey, my mom's sick. She just called me," or like I don't remember, because I don't think I had a cell phone. But I said something along like, basically, my mom's sick. I need to go home. And I literally walked home from there, and I never tried out again. And like I did not live super close to the high school. It was like a few mile walk, but I was like, I don't want to be here. And so I'd never played football in high school, which was a really big bummer, because if you would have asked me in junior high if I'm going to play football, I would have been like, what kind of question is that? Of course I am. I was looking forward to it my entire life, because I was never able to play Pop Warner. I was never able to play full pads. We couldn't afford them. And so I was like, of course I'm going to play when I'm in high school. It's literally all I'm looking forward to. So that didn't happen. Now, maybe a blessing in disguise, because now I had, more time, and I ended up finding the drums, which became my first real hyperfixation that I actually was good at. Skating, I skated my entire life. I still skate. I've never been good at skating. I never got good to where someone would watch me skate and be like, well, that guy's pretty good. Never happened. Still hasn't happened, right? But with drums, I picked it up relatively quickly. Now, I don't remember exactly how I got into drumming. I think it might have honestly been like Rock Band and Guitar Hero, because I always have been someone that moves constantly, right? I think it might have something to do with my ADD, but I always when I'm recording these videos, my leg is almost always moving. That's why I have this fidget thing, and I always spin it and stuff, because I just need to be moving. If you're watching, I'm always kind of readjusting myself. And so I've always kind of like tapped along to beats and stuff. And I'm pretty sure I started playing Rock Band, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And then I got I think it was for like a Christmas present or my birthday or something. I got like a pair of drumsticks and like a little drum pad, and I just practiced constantly. I started looking up videos on YouTube of how to play drums. This is when YouTube was like basically brand new. How to play drums. I started how do you hold drumsticks? How do you I completely taught myself how to drum, right? And then one year around income tax season. So for us, income tax season wasn't a bad thing. It was actually a good thing, because my mom actually got money back because of, we were just so low income. And she would always kind of every other year you would get a present, because one year the present would be for my brother, 1 year it'd be for my sister, and 1 year it'd be for me, because it was like the only time during the year we had any sort of disposable income where she could get something cool, right? Like something big. Because even for like Christmases and holidays growing up, we wouldn't really get crazy gifts. Like we always would get gifts. My mom tried her best to, do what she could. But it wasn't anything crazy. We were very lucky that we had a couple different church groups and just groups in general that would, kind of help us out during the holidays, and they'd bring tons of gifts. There was this one year where it was crazy. It was like Christmas Eve, and we were like, well, there's like 3 things under the tree. It was just like, okay, it is what it is. And they brought, it was crazy. The amount of stuff they brought. Like our living room was like full of gifts. It was so cool. It was genuinely one of the coolest things ever. That was this company called this place called Sunshine Haven. I'm not sure if they're still around, but they were really good to my mom and us growing up. Like they really helped us a lot, because if it wasn't for them, like a lot of holidays would not have been as joyous as they were. So shout out to them. That was really nice. But so 1 year for income tax. Sorry, got sidetracked again. For income tax, my mom got me a drum set. And so, thanks, Mom. And I was able to start playing drums. And I cannot explain to you how much this completely changed the trajectory of my life, I believe. But made me feel like I actually can do something if I set my mind to it. This was the first thing that I had ever actually seen significant improvement from this thing that I genuinely enjoy doing all the time. And so for basically the rest of high school, I was known as the drummer, right? Like that's the way that I talked about myself. That's how I saw myself. I was a musician. I was a drummer. I never learned how to read music, but that's who I was. That's who I was. And, as high school was going on, I was just gaining more and more weight. And so I just got bigger and bigger, and I definitely was becoming less and less active, but I still was relatively active. I still, like most years, I would either skate to school or I'd ride my bike to school. Like I always was moving, right? And it was funny skating when I was bigger and I'd skate, it would I could see people in their cars. They would just watch me because I was so large, but I could skate. Like I'm not good at skating as far as tricks, but as far as like maneuvering, getting around, I can do that pretty well. I'm pretty confident in myself. And so I'd be going pretty fast. One time I fell in the middle of an intersection. I was so tired. I just laid there for a while. I'm glad I didn't get ran over. But so high school, that became my entire personality. And I continued to, gain weight. And I actually am very lucky that I even graduated. So the high school that I went to, I think I was lucky because they were very, they had a very vested interest in everyone graduating, because basically more people graduating, they made more money and they were able to spend more money at the school. And so in my senior year, I went to a meeting with my, I think it was my, not guidance counselor. It was basically like I would have an advocate who like I would meet with every once in a while because of my ISP and like the resource specialist program that I was in because of special ed. And we would basically have conversations of like, do you need any help in school, blah, blah, blah. But this time she was like, if you don't knuckle down and do this stuff, like you're not going to graduate. And so I got put in 2 classes in my senior year that were basically making up for all the other classes that I failed. So one of them was all just doing a bunch of packets where you just sit there, paper packets, and just fill out the packets, and you'd get through like, it was kind of cheating, it felt like, but you'd get through classes in like weeks. That should have taken, half a year to get through. You'd get through it in weeks because you just fill out these packets and finish them, right? And then the other one was the same thing, but basically just on computers, because this is when computers weren't as big of a deal as they are now. And so it was basically the same thing, but just on computer, and it was just a program that you would get through classes in record time. And so I was able to graduate with my graduating class of 2010. And that was it was a good feeling being able to graduate. But at the time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at all. Like zero. I wanted to be a drummer. That's what I knew. And so I ended up going to community college because ain't no college was going to accept me. And also ain't no way I was going to afford getting into a college, right? And so junior college was the way to go. And actually at the time, my mom was really good with like understanding FAFSA, which was basically like a way to get in, like community college, a way for you to get money to go to college. They'd like pay you certain money. I don't remember exactly what it was. They gave me, like, I got a check from them for like $3,000 or something like that. That was supposed to be for college stuff. And I just bought it clothes. That was it. Yeah, I did not use it for what I was supposed to. But I went to college. I went there for 1 year. And I avoided all math classes and all English classes because I was too afraid to take them. And so I was like, I'm going to be a music major. And so I took a few classes. One of my favorite classes was a history of jazz class. That was a very cool class. I really enjoyed that class a lot. And I also took another music class that I took was Introduction to the Music Industry. I really liked the teacher or the professor, and I thought he really liked me, but my man gave me a D in the class, and that was like really a bummer because I enjoyed the class a lot. I just, again, did not do enough work. And then I took Spanish, and I'm almost positive the professor passed me because I acted like I tried. Like whenever we would have a test, I would try and make sure I was the last person to leave, and I would make sure I looked like I was trying, when in reality, I'm like, I don't know any of this. I don't understand it at all. I don't know anything. And so I think he gave me a C, I think, because he was like, I don't want to see this guy again. And then some other random classes that I don't really remember. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a music major. I took a couple music classes. I'm feeling it. And then I was going to go into my second semester, and there was a class that was, I think it was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a music class, right? And so I showed up for the first day, and the first day the professor was like, all right, I don't know why they don't put this in the syllabus. I don't know why they don't put this in the prerequisites, but if you don't know how to read music, I'm not saying that it's impossible to pass this class, but you need to learn how to read music as soon as possible, because that's basically like, you need to know how to do that to do anything else in this class. And I did not know how to read music. And for a few days I tried really hard because it wasn't like I had class every day. So it was only like a couple times a week. And so I went to the second class, still didn't really understand anything. And then I was like, all right, this ain't for me. So I dropped that class. And then that was basically, I just didn't go back to college. So I went to college for about a year. And then from there, I failed. Basically, I flunked out. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I have a high school diploma. I was like, I don't feel like I have really any skills. I just didn't know. And so then I just started applying to random jobs, right? And so the first job that I got was at the Vans shoe store. And I felt very lucky that they hired me because I couldn't, it was pretty embarrassing, but I could not fit into any of the clothes they made. And so I brought my own shirts, right? Because you're supposed to wear Vans shirts there. And so I would just buy my own blank t-shirts, and they said that would work, right? But that was my first job, and I enjoyed it. I made a lot of really good friends at that place, but it was my weight was it was even affecting me with that job, which was not that physical, but at the Vans shoe store, I think it's pretty similar still, but you see the storefront that everyone walks into when they buy shoes. But then when you go into the back, there's this huge warehouse area where it has these racks of shoes that slide on these rollers. But it's really tall, 10 foot plus. And so to get a lot of the shoes, you have to get on a ladder, climb up, grab them, blah, blah, blah. And so that was obviously pretty hard for me. And I would sweat so much when I would work that it was pretty gross. So I had to bring a sweat rag with me. And no one else had to do that, because it's not like maybe during the holiday rush there was a lot, but for the most part it was not that hard. But it was hard for me. And so I've kind of lost track of the gaining weight thing. But I mean, basically throughout all of this, my weight was just going up and up and up and up. And so, okay, I do want to take a step back though. So when I was in 10th grade, me and my mom actually went to this doctor. Well, it was this trial. And so I didn't realize that's what it was, but it was a trial. They were trialing out the lap band for minors. And so it was at UCSD, and my mom brought me because they were going to pay for it, because obviously we wouldn't be able to afford it. And I remember I went into this, it was probably a classroom, right? But it was this huge room where there's people down at the bottom, and then all the parents and kids were kind of sitting, and they went through what the lap band was, why they wanted to do this, yada, yada, yada. And then, so we did that, and I talked to my mom on the way home, and I was like, I don't know, because there was a lot of restrictions, you can't have soda, and your boy loved soda. I drank probably a 2 liter of soda every day. I drank a lot of soda. My diet at the time, let's talk more about the weight. My diet at the time when I was at my heaviest was I would eat, I would drink the 2 liter of soda basically every day. Frequently, I would get McDonald's, and that would entail 2 McDoubles, 2 McChickens, a large fry, a large drink, sometimes chicken nuggets, right? This is when all that stuff was a lot cheaper than it is now. I've lived in San Diego my whole life, so Mexican food here is very popular. I love Mexican food, and so I would get carne asada fries, which is just huge. It's a big portion. Usually people split it between 2 or 3 or 4 people, right? Sometimes I would eat that myself, but it's just fries with carne asada, and then cheese, a lot of times sour cream, guacamole, it's a lot, right? And then, or a California burrito, which is basically a carne asada burrito. So it's a tortilla, there's cheese in there. There will be meat, obviously carne asada. And then, but this one would have fries inside of it as well. And yeah, so I would eat that frequently. And then for dinner, a lot of times my mom would cook spaghetti or something, right? And so And then I would snack on a huge bag of chips or whatever, right? So I just had like basically the worst diet someone could have. It was just like, I just ate whatever the thing is, like, ate what everyone else would eat, but I would just eat so much more, right? So like my friends are going to McDonald's. I don't understand why they aren't gaining weight like I am. Well, because they're just having one McDouble and maybe some chicken nuggets. I'm having 2 McDoubles, 2 McChickens, a large fry, and a large drink, and chicken nuggets sometimes, right? That's why I was gaining weight, right? So I really, really didn't understand why I was gaining weight. But that's like, once I graduated high school, that's when my weight really started to pick up, because I wasn't skating to school anymore. I wasn't like moving as much. I wasn't like, I would work and then I would go home and sit on my bed and watch Netflix, right? This is when Netflix was first, like, not just DVDs, right? And so that's what I would do, and play video games. And that's all I did. I barely was physical at all. And around this time was my mom told me that, like, she would come into my room when I was sleeping and see me under my covers, and she would just start to cry because of just how big the lump was, right? That she would say. And like, at this time, this is when I really started to like be afraid of my weight. Before, it was always this thing that I wish I could be smaller. Like, genuinely, I would have dreams about being thin and skating and being good, because I always felt like my weight is the reason I can't be good at skating. So if I was thinner, I'd just be really good. I would have dreams about that. Literal, like when I'm sleeping, I would have those dreams. And it was like it was this huge thing. Like, I just felt so like, just, I could not be the person that I wanted to be. I felt like I was trapped in my skin, right? I felt like I was trapped in this obese version of myself. I've said that before. And it was really hard for me. It was really hard for me. And I remember like one of the hardest nights, I've told this before, was I was with a group of friends, and my best friend Nolan, he's still probably my best friend now to this day. And it was a group of us in high school, and we were like at someone's house, and we're all watching movies, just like a movie night. And then they were like, oh, we should play hide and seek. And so I knew what that meant. Basically meant so all the couples can go off and hide together and probably make out or whatever. And so everyone basically separated into their couples, and I was the only, like, no one was actually hiding. No one was really seeking. It was just so people could go and do the thing. And so I just started walking around the block, just like constantly. And it was like a very small block. It was like just a few houses. And eventually my best friend like saw me, noticed that I was just walking in circles. And he came up to me. He was like, dude, what's going on? What are you doing? And I just started crying, because I was just like, I feel like I'll never be able to get a girlfriend. I feel like I'll never be able to have these things that, were so important to me, especially as a high school kid. Like, it just felt like this is such a huge part of this thing that I'm missing out on. Like, I never kissed a girl. I like so much stuff that I just felt like I'm missing out on. I don't have this, and everyone else gets to enjoy it. And like, there's just something wrong with me. And that was really, really tough. And I remember one of the other times, and no shade against this girl. She was not trying to be mean at all. I know that for a fact. But because I would make fun of myself so much, like, I constantly made fun of myself because I was so afraid of other people making fun of me. I think that's why I wouldn't get made fun of very much. I would constantly make fun of myself. And so this kind of came to a head when I was walking with a group of my friends. We were at the mall, and there was this girl that I liked. And I was like, man, she's cute. It'd be so cool to like hold her hand. Like, that's like where I was. And we walked past Torrid, which is a plus size for women, plus size like clothing company. And she looked at the store and she was like, oh, John, if you were a girl, you'd shop there. And it, like, I think she thought I'd think it's funny because, again, those are jokes I would make at my own expense. But she could tell immediately I did not like that joke. And like, it really hurt my feelings. And she immediately felt bad. And I remember we went to go see a movie. There was like a big group of us, and she like sat next to me, tried to hold my hand, and I was just like, I don't want like the sympathy thing. I'm not like, but that really, really hurt. But other than that, I was pretty lucky that I didn't get like made fun of or have anyone really make fun of me too much because of my weight. But again, it was something that was it was just always on my mind. One of the other times, this one was just so messed up, bro. This, like, still to this day, I'm like, most of the other ones, I'm like, it is what it is. But this one, I'm like, nah, that guy was a jerk. Like, I think I was in high school, and I was at church, and I don't know, I think I was being like kind of annoying kid, and I was with one of the leaders, and there was like a stack of papers that I think I made him drop. Like, we were messing around, and there was like a group of us around, right? And the papers dropped, and he was like, pick those up. And I was just like, no. And he was like, pick them up. I was like, no. Right? And then he said, I know it's hard for you, but just pick them up. Like, basically, I think he said, like, I know for you it's hard. Like, basically implying because I was so big. And that dude, oh, that hurt my feelings so bad, because the kids were like, oh, like, they were, being kids, like, thinking, oh, he got you. But that was like, bro, that was like probably the worst that I ever dealt with, because it was a leader, and I just felt like so almost betrayed by someone that's in power over me, right? And so that was really difficult. But it is what it is. But so growing up, yeah, that's kind of the story of gaining the weight. And then I'm kind of skipping over a lot. It really is hard to tell your whole life story and remember it at the same time. I did not write any of this down. This is all off the top of the dome. But 20 years old was when I started to lose the weight. And the way that happened was, at this time in my life, I've told this story a million times, so some of you have probably heard this, but I was 20 years old, genuinely terrified of being alone, because I thought, if I'm alone and I have a heart attack, no one will be here. And that's not a normal thing for a 20-year-old to think. But I just felt like at that point I was at my heaviest, right? Close to, if not over 400 pounds. I don't know my actual highest weight, but like, I was very large to where it was very much so restricting my life, making it so I could not wear what I wanted to wear. I wore a size 5XL shirt, 56-inch waist, and it was only getting bigger. And like, it was getting scary. There was this place that was where in San Diego called Mario's that carried sizes up to, I think, a 60 in Dickies. I basically only wore Dickies because that was the only thing that was in my size. And I was like, eventually I'm going to not be able to buy from Mario's. And again, this was a little bit before Amazon was such a big thing. And like, at this point, now it probably wouldn't have been such a big deal. But at that point I was like, I don't know where I'm going to buy clothes. Like, I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so, 20 years old, I had those thoughts. I genuinely was just really miserable at this point. Like, my weight really was affecting me in every way possible. And so at this point, I was working at Vans. I would work and then go home. And as I was home, I started watching Miami Ink, which is, if you don't know, it's a show basically where they, way back in the day, where like one of the first reality shows where they would just be like at this tattoo shop, and then people would get tattoos, and they would like, oh, what are you getting? Why are you getting that? And then they would tell a story of why they're getting the tattoos, pretty basic stuff. But a guy came on that show. Well, okay, before we get into that, this is important. Before that, though, I'm sorry. This is all over the place. This is my ADD brain without anyone else here to stop it, right? Before, when I had my podcast with my brother, he probably would have been like, what are you talking about? But before that, I had a wedding that I had to go to, that I was invited to. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. And it was my best friend Nolan, his older brother. It was in Utah. I live in San Diego, 13-hour drive. Before that drive, I had to find clothes for this wedding. That was miserable because, again, 5XL shirt, 56-inch waist. It was not easy to find clothes. We ended up finding stuff finally. I thought I looked super fresh. And so we ended up taking this drive up there, 13 hours. And by the time we got up there, I'd been snacking on junk food all day. We get up there. We made the drive in one day. And I went to get out of the car, and I almost fainted and like kind of fell back into the car. And that really scared me because, again, I was always thinking my weight's going to be the thing that kills me. That's kind of what would go through my mind constantly. And that was like, I felt like, oh, this is it. It's starting. And the people in the car noticed it. Like, are you okay? I was like, oh yeah, I think it's just the altitude change. I just need some Advil or whatever and some water. And so luckily there wasn't anything serious that happened. I don't know exactly what happened. I didn't go to the doctor. But nothing seemed to be a super big issue. And so I, we did the wedding, came back, and a few weeks later, I saw the photos from the wedding. Again, I thought it looked fresh, and then the photos came, and I was like, wow, I don't ever want to see those again because I was just so big. Like, I remember I was wearing a 5XL shirt, but it was like a button up, and when I'd sit down, the buttons would pop open because it just didn't even fit me. But moving on, watching Miami Ink, and a guy came on Miami Ink that had lost a lot of weight. He was getting a cheeseburger tattoo to kind of commemorate his weight loss, and they kind of asked him what did he do to lose the weight, and he said something along the lines of choices. Like, I just decided that the choices that I was making were not that led me to the point that I was, so I just need to make different choices, and that really resonated with me. Oh man, I can't explain how I was just ready. Like, I remember that night I was eating Panda Express. I had a double entree plate of orange chicken and fried rice, and I had a large drink, and their drinks are really big. And I was like, all right, I'm going to eat this because I didn't want to waste it. I'm going to eat this. Tomorrow, it's go time. Like, we're going to do this, right? And I woke up the next day, and I don't know, I just believed that I was going to do it. That's the best way I can explain it. I woke up and I was like, this is happening. I remember I went to Vaughn's. I live really close to a Vaughn's, which is a grocery store. And I bought like sandwich stuff and water because I was like, I don't know what's healthy. And I got a haircut because I was like, new me, baby. Let's do this. And that was like the start of it. It really was. Like, I would eat 2 sandwiches for a meal sometimes. And my mom would be like, isn't bread, like, again, she didn't know. She was just trying to help. She's like, isn't bread bad for losing weight? And I remember I'd be like, well, it's better than what I was eating, so I'm going to continue doing this. And she was like, all right, that makes sense. And so that's how I started. I literally knew absolutely nothing, no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what a calorie was. I didn't know what a carb was. I didn't know anything. And I just started. And that's a whole story that I think I could tell another day. I don't want to get into all of that, but that's kind of where I started. At 20 years old, that's when I lost the weight. I lost the weight in about 2 years, a year and a half. And I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and it was not the healthiest. And I've talked about that many times, but I think I want to keep this around an hour, and we're almost there now. So I think we can, continue that story later. But that was when I started. I started at 20 years old, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I just decided this is it. And I remember waking up that day feeling, I don't know why, I felt like it's going to happen. Call it delusion because it probably was, but I was like, this is it. I believe in myself. And like, I really believed I could do it. And that belief has never left. Like, it's been 11 years, I'm 31, like I said, and I still believe that at this point, I don't think I will ever gain the weight back. There was a time where I struggled with it, and I felt like, okay, when I was struggling with binge eating, where I felt like maybe I will gain this weight back because I really don't know. But now at this point, I don't think that will ever happen. I enjoy running. I enjoy lifting. I enjoy just having a healthy lifestyle, being active. And I got to say, like, starting the YouTube channel, I think we'll save that story for another podcast, but starting the YouTube channel and just everything that has come from obese to beast has literally changed my life because, like I said earlier in the podcast, like, I did not know what I was going to do. I had no skills. I just had no idea. And so I just feel incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed, if that's the word that you want to use, to be able to do what I do for a living. And the fact that there are people that might listen to this whole thing, I don't know how many people are going to, but there'll be at least 3 people, I'm sure, right? That are willing to listen is a very, very cool thing. And I don't take it for granted. And it really is like the thing I'm most proud of probably in my entire life that I've been able to do so far. And so, yeah, I think that's where I'm going to stop. I think we can maybe keep up the story next week or next time. I don't know how much I'm going to upload. If you made it to the end, I appreciate it. If you have any ideas or things you want to say to me, please send me a message on Instagram. I try and read most of them. I'm not able to reply to everybody, but I try and read most of them. So if you could send me a message of ideas for the podcast name, or if you made it to the end and you just want to let me know that you made it to the end, I would seriously appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, Leave a comment about, again, if you want to try and shoot me a name for it, leave a comment down there. Or just if you made it to the end, I don't know, comment a duck emoji or something. I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much. I don't really know how to end this podcast, but I don't know. I'll see you next time, and hopefully you enjoyed it. See you later.